properties, we had a renter put a towel in the sink, turn the water on, and then leave. Actually gave our information to a prospective landlord to do a check.
That was their intent. No sane person would do that. Awesome, Craig. Thanks for taking the time to be here. I really appreciate you coming on. It sounds like you're a Privy user. I didn't realize that you actually were having some success with it. So I am really excited to be talking to you.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks, Benson. This is it's really cool to chat with you too. I just started using Privy literally less than a month ago now. I found my first property on it probably within a couple of days of using it. I'm in contract on that property now. We close at the end of the month, about 3 weeks away. So we've got the money lined up, got some partners lined up. It's looking really good, and literally found it within a couple of days of starting to use the software.
That's really cool. What's the approach? What are you going to do with this house? Are you going to fix and flip it or keep it as a rental?
Single family residential. It's going to be a fix and flip. It's actually really interesting. I started inputting my parameters into Privy and trying to figure out, where am I going to be? What am I looking at? What area am I looking at? The types of values I'm looking at. And I had input the numbers that I was going for in terms of ARV and things like that. And this property pops up as I look at it. It meets my initial numbers, and I start digging into it a little bit more after having my agent speak with their agent. Turns out it was a property that someone had bought within the previous year and started to do some rehab on, but they did not get permits and they were shut down. And it was an out-of-state investor who wasn't local, wasn't able to manage crews. Costs started piling up. So this ended up turning into a short sale. So I ended up buying it from the bank at a price that was a little bit less than what the previous investor was working on. So that was a property that had hit the market, but I think a lot of people had gotten scared away just kind of looking at this on the MLS. But looking at it on Privy actually allowed me to look at it in relation to what the potential ARV was and in relation to kind of the investor numbers, which was really cool. I'm not sure that anyone would have looked at it or analyzed it on that type of scenario had they just pulled this up, blindly on the MLS or had a conversation with their real estate agent about it.
That's so cool. Well, it isn't cool that that person got in trouble, but that stuff happens all the time, right? That's just the nature of the business. And some people get in over their heads, or they just don't realize the extent of the construction, or they didn't have their numbers right in the first place. Maybe they weren't using a tool like Privy, and they were copying
exactly
like
right.
Zillow or some website, right? And they're like, oh, well, this looks great. Not really understanding the local market realities.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Real estate is local. There's no one number across the country, as you well know. And I think in this case, you have an investor who's from the West Coast working on a property on the East Coast, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that, except that if you can't sometimes touch the property or feel it, or at least get a little bit close to it and understand the crews working locally, or knowing that, hey, maybe this is in a city where they're really tough on permits and they're really tough on making sure you've got all your I's dotted and your T's crossed. And I think in this case that jammed them up a little bit. And it's a case where they moved on maybe to something else. But I think see how everything compares and have it in a really nice, easy to see dashboard. Not having that is a lot of searching in a lot of different places. Not having that ability to kind of crunch numbers in a really visual view makes it a little bit tougher for things to fall through the cracks. So it's been really cool to work with Privy on that level.
So tell me about the market itself and the property. Curious, what it is you're looking to do, using your strategy and using Privy.
Yeah, perfect. So essentially, this is a single family home. It's a nice property. It's a 2-bedroom, 1 bath. The previous owner started building out in the basement, 3rd bedroom and a 2nd bath. So puts it at 3.2. The idea was that they were going to flip it all the time, I assume. So we're going into this with a couple contractors, and we're going to finish up the work they started in the basement, finish that, building out that 3rd bedroom, framing it out, finish out the plumbing for the 2nd bathroom, and then we'll put it on the market. So this is a property we're going to pick up at around 85, I think was the number. And we're looking to sell it around 230 in the end. So it's going to be a pretty profitable project for us when this is done. So it's, pretty good shape. Yeah.
So I'm not great at math, But are you at around what, 30% of the ARV?
In terms of cost. So we're going into it 85, right? So and then we've got about 60 of costs, which, you know,
Mhm.
after we get financing fees and stuff like that, we'll be right around 160,000 in, and we're looking to sell it at 220. So, you know, we're talking about, you know, somewhere between 50 and 60 on the back end for a profit. So, you know, out of the 220, you're talking about, you know, that's a good 25% profit margin there.
That's pretty good.
It's not
That's
bad.
really
It's
good.
not bad. Yeah.
Would it make sense from like a Burr perspective, maybe keep it as a rental,
Yeah, you know,
adding
it's
that
funny
extra
that
bedroom?
yeah, you know, it's funny you mentioned that. We looked at the numbers in the area. So, you know, coming out of this, the LTV for a takeout loan is going to be in pretty decent shape. So, if for some reason we can't get it at the market, if the market softens between now and say, you know, let's call it 5, 6 months from now when we're done with this, we've looked at the numbers. We feel pretty comfortable where it's going to come out. That if we wanted to hold it, we certainly could. This property is about 2 to 2.5 miles away from the football stadium, the baseball stadium, downtown Pittsburgh. It's maybe 2.5 miles from 4 or 5 different colleges. It's in a pretty good area if we do want to rent it. Yeah.
So that's still on the table. You potentially could get to the end of this and it'd be a labor of love, and you'd be like, let's just keep this thing. It like we did
Keep,
it so well. Like, we don't want to give it
yeah.
to somebody else.
Yeah, I don't know if my wife and I are going to want to move into it, but you know, we'll definitely think about. It's possible we could rent it. I mean, there's
Yeah.
a lot of interest in the area, a lot of college kids in the area. I shouldn't just say college kids. Got a lot of people, college, even graduate school. There's probably 4 or 5 different colleges in the area, so
Wow.
there's potential there, and it's kind of a, you know, it's a cool kind of up and coming area, you know, adjacent to the city. So, you know, parking's a little bit tough, I think, but other than that, it's in a really great spot.
That's pretty cool. So, I mean, if it works as a long-term rental, it certainly has a possibility of being a successful short-term or mid-term rental.
Yeah, there's it's kind of funny you mentioned that the city is putting an ordinance in place, not much unlike what they've done in places like Los Angeles and New York City, where they're trying to restrict some of the short-term rentals. I think there's been a lot of people complaining about things like Airbnb and stuff like that. And there's a likelihood that between now and when this project closes, that there'll be some of the short-term like an ordinance to restrict some of the short-term rentals. So that I didn't really look at it from that standpoint, but from a rent standpoint, from a pure rental standpoint, even to the college age area, it cash flows at a pretty good rate. Yeah, like the DSCR on this, I think we were looking at somewhere around 1.3.
Mhm.
So you know, just with a standard takeout or a DSCR loan on the back end, it looks pretty good.
So it sounds like you're back on the horse.
Yeah.
You've got this prep under contract. You're getting ready to close it.
Yep.
Hopefully one of many deals that you're doing. You mentioned before that, you were doing some stuff in the 2000s, like I
Yeah.
was, right?
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing a little bit of that story?
Yeah, of course. So the first property I bought was in 2004, and the market was going crazy. You know, we were making offers on property at 9 in the morning, and by 10 a.m. they were gone.
Yeah.
It was just in that run up to 2008. So we had bought a townhouse in Los Angeles. It was like almost $500,000 for a 2 bedroom townhouse, and within a year, that property went up to almost $700,000 in value. So my wife and I had, like, you know, we did a cash out refi, paid off the wedding, you know, paid off some student loans and stuff like that. And it was great. And then within a year, that property was down the value. Well, sorry, not within a year. We hit 2008. That property was worth like 250 grand. And I think we owed like 600 on it, something crazy.
Oh
We
no.
actually held on to that property and we rented it out. It was in a great area in Los Angeles, like maybe a mile from the beach. So we rented that out for years and kind of rode that wave up and down. We had then moved up to Seattle. We bought a place in Seattle after the market started to come down. We bought in a good time. And then we had fixed up that property. A couple years later, we ended up selling that property. And then a few years after that, when the market stabilized, we ended up selling the property in Los Angeles. So, you know, we didn't do too terrible on either one. I can't really say we made a ton of money on those just because of kind of the ride and the up and down and, you know, the cash out on those properties. And then since then, I've worked with some friends on some small deals here or there. But My wife and I had kids, and we both worked from home. And, working from home through the pandemic, there's really not much time for anything else. So I would say for the last 5 or 6 years, it's been pretty dormant, and we haven't really done anything. My background was in engineering. I was a civil engineer working on commercial real estate, really just getting the pad ready, doing site design and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say I have a background in real estate, but I understand it at least a little bit, and had worked with contractors and subs before. But it'd been years since we had done that. And now the kids are a little bit older, and we're getting to a position where we could do more of that. So we started looking back into it, and here we are, literally, looking around, making sure that everything is done clean, making sure the numbers are done right. I wanted to put some software in place. I'd seen a lot of your videos, and even some of the other people involved in real estate that you see on YouTube, that you had done some videos with too, Benson. And the videos are fantastic. The software is fantastic. So we picked it up, and here we are with like literally first property out of the gate.
That's pretty amazing. What's the
Yeah.
plan? Like, what's your goal for 2024? Do you have
Yeah.
a mark that you want to hit for the number of deals, or how are you
Yeah.
measuring that? What are your KPIs?
Yeah, absolutely. So, right now, this is the first one. Over the last couple of years, as I've been thinking about this, I've been starting to put a team together. So I've got a friend of mine who's a local GC, and then I have a friend of mine who's a real estate agent. So the three of us kind of make this team together. And we look at properties, and which is what we're really using Privy for now, really going through and saying, look, if we could be somewhere in the 100 to 200 range on a purchase, we know we can take these down with the amount of cash that we have. And then if we're going to work with some partners, maybe we have a little bit more leeway to go a little bit higher, maybe into the 200,000 range, which is a really good range for us because that's kind of the area that we're working in Western Pennsylvania right now. So, Privy's got great access through Western Pennsylvania MLS, which is fantastic. So we look at that stuff. We log into Privy. We have our searches cut out. When properties pop up, we're notified. We go in, we pull it down. We're actually looking at another house tomorrow that we found on Privy as well. So that's another property in maybe about 10, 15 miles away that we're looking at, but it's in the area, and it's another one that looks to have a lot of potential. And that was another MLS deal too, that, I think is just being ignored by agents or, people who maybe don't have software like this, where they can see previous pictures. How was it done previously? What did that last sale look like? Or even some of the additional information related to tax and stuff like that, which they can't get unless they're doing a little bit of digging here.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time putting all of that actionable information in one place, so you can just get in there and get stuff done. And most of us, we've got full-time jobs, we've got 9 to 5s, and it's hard to really properly analyze properties, get good deal flow consistently, and put some systems in place so you can get consistent results. And I think that's what catches a lot of people up, is they don't have the automation in their business to be able to get kind of those results that you might need to be able to move forward in their business and hit their numbers.
I think that's right. I mean, I call myself a recovering engineer. I'm in marketing now, but the engineering side of me wants to put process in place, wants to put templates in place. And, I love Zillow and I love Redfin. I use them all the time, right? Even realtor.com is something that I can use or look at and has some good information. But what I found myself doing was going to like a place like Redfin and saying like, wow, this view is really nice. The images are great here. And then, Zillow has their estimates, and okay, that's a good thing there. But when I wanted to find comps, it was really tough, right? Because, maybe in some areas you have MLS, maybe you don't. If you have a real estate agent that you're working with, maybe they give you comps in a day or maybe 2 days, right? But I found myself going back and forth between the different software. Like, this software has this one has this other one I have to rely on a contractor, or I have to get my comps from the agent. And that stuff started to get really cumbersome. And then you have to wait, and you don't want to have to wait. There are properties that I've lost because I didn't get an offer in a certain period of time, sometimes hours. So, I've made, I don't know, maybe half dozen offers just in the last couple of days. And some of those I lost because I was the third person in line. So now having this software, I've got everything there. The comps are fantastic. You could do your settings. You could change the settings very quickly, include certain ones, exclude certain ones. All that information is there, and it's real easy. Within that one pane of Privy, I can pretty much see everything I need to see other than maybe taking a look at the property in person or having a contractor do it. But
Yeah.
you've got everything there. And, I've made calls, off this, and it's really nice to have everything in one place. Like you said, it saves a lot of time.
Yeah. So the way that we connected was interesting, right? So it was through LinkedIn. I think you sent me a message and a couple of weeks ago, or maybe even a month ago, and I'm not in there often. And so I finally came about it. I was like, oh shoot, sorry, Craig, it took me so long. And you had mentioned something about your past, and we have some similar paths in our real estate journey. And so we reconnected. And so you had some questions about like leveraging the maximum capability and features that are in Privy. Like, what is it you're trying to do, and what do you think that we can help you accomplish?
Yeah, that's great. So one of the things that I really liked in some of the videos that I had watched that you'd done before is kind of picking a target area, or going in and seeing where a lot of deals are done, right? And I think that was a great way to start out. And I've since run a little bit of a search, and I've honed in on a county, and I've put a couple areas of a specific county in. And then I went in and I set, like, where do I want to be in terms of my filters? My price range, it was like under 200,000. And I'm trying to stick around an ARV of 55%. I'm wondering though, in your experience, what's a good mix of that ARV to look at, right? Because I did that number with this one deal that I'm working on right now. And it looks like I may have even been overly conservative, because if everything works out, right? Like when you're looking at really low ARV deals, it's not like there's a million low ARV deals out there. They need a lot of work. But I don't want to go into properties that need like ground up remodels and things like that. So, should I be looking at something maybe that's a little bit higher ARV? Like I don't want to skin it to 70 or 75, because then there's not enough room.
Right.
But like, where's that good sweet spot in terms of that
It's
initial search?
Yeah, it is market specific, right? So the same question would have a completely different result if we were looking in, LA, like you were in before, right? Like
Yeah.
they are going up to 75, 80% of ARV, and they're doing flips.
Mm,
And the price points are much different. So a lot of it has
right.
to do with which market you choose. Obviously, we're talking about the Pittsburgh market, but in general, the higher the prices, the higher you can go on the percentage of ARV and still have a margin where you're making a good amount of money. It'd be a smaller margin on the back end, but 10% of $1 million is $100,000.
Right.
10% of 100,000 is only $10,000. So for a lot of people, it isn't so much the percentage, like their ROI they're getting, but I want to make 50 grand on a project because I know
Yeah.
that if I'm spending that much time on it over a certain period of time, that it's worth my time investment. So for Pittsburgh, it could be much different. But what I would suggest is that you look at the data and what other investors are doing. So when we're looking at the map here, this here shows us, where we have that direct to MLS data, but you're over here in the Western Pennsylvania market.
Yep.
So if we look at the Pittsburgh area, and this area does have that direct to MLS, like you mentioned, because it was in the blue area.
Yep.
Right over here where it says the fix and flip, if you click that button, that's going to show us properties that were purchased, fixed up, and sold. And the bottom, lower than 75% of the ARV. That's just kind of the number we picked to identify flips. And so there are certain areas here in and around Pittsburgh that have more activity than others. And so
Yep.
if we drill down into this area that says 416, then we're going to start to see that break up. And then there are certain areas that are more active than others, right? So right over here and right here is the highest investor activity in all of Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
Where is that property at that you purchased on the map, just relative to like downtown?
Yeah. So if you go like north of where you see the 23, north of where you are, and
Mm-hmm.
then up to the right where it says Millvale, like generally right in that area.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's zoom in a little bit closer here. And in these clusters, what they do is they start to break up
Yeah.
into smaller clusters. And then eventually we'll get close enough to see all the individual transactions.
Yep.
And then we can get more into the weeds with the numbers themselves. So again, we're looking at 2 transactions. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to find all flips, but what we're looking for is a purchase. And then within 18 months, if it went up in value 25%, then we'll flag it as a potential flip. But some of these, just don't look like flips. But again, we're just looking at the numbers. This house right here does look like a flip, right? So it's got, the fresh paint, the new flooring. It's a 3-2, they got new appliances in here. And then this comparative market analysis, of course, we're using this to build a
Yep.
CMA for every property. Here's all the comparables of the house. We do see these right here. So these right here are indicative of other flips in the area. Whenever you see the light gray before price and the black after, those are houses that we think that could be renovations. So this area in here in Penn Hills does have quite a bit of investor activity.
Yeah.
This house here was acquired at 43%. So what I would suggest is going in and looking at the last 10 to 20 flips in your target area, and then coming up with like a median percentage of ARV price.
Okay.
And then
That's a
that
great
will
idea.
help you understand like what is your competition doing? Right.
Yeah.
Because if you're losing out, like you're submitting offers and it sounds like you've got one under contract, potentially one more today or tomorrow.
Yeah.
Those are good numbers. You're putting out enough offers to get good deal flow. But then it's like, okay, is my offer competitive? My competition, in this case, this was an off-market deal. So we want to make sure that's noted. And we know that because this says public records right here. So they bought this direct from seller.
Yeah.
But they renovated it, right? So what I do is I go down and I just look at, a handful of homes, and I just do my local market research. What are they buying them for? What are they selling them for? What's the percentage of ARV? And then I want to find these ones that look like they've been renovated and use those as kind of the foundation of my market research.
Okay.
This one was an on-market deal. So we know that because it has the MLS ID here. It's got the before photos.
Mm-hmm.
We can see this is what the condition of the home was prior to the renovation. It doesn't look like it's in horrible shape, but there's just stuff everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But they got this at 46%, an on-market deal.
Yeah.
Now
So it's looking like, yeah, like the low 40s, mid 40s. That's where like some of these look like they're popping.
and this might be a good idea too, to start like looking to see who your competition is, like figuring out what D and AMP and A Investing LLC is doing, right? And there actually might be an opportunity to work with some of these people. Maybe you come across a property that's under contract, or no, that you come across a property, you get it under contract, and you realize, you know what, our the crew we had on our other project, they're not going to be finished till December. We don't have two projects that we can do at the same time. So instead of just canceling the contract, maybe you can wholesale it to these guys.
Yeah.
Right. That's an opportunity. So for the wholesalers out there, go into the assessor's record section, look at who the flipper was, or if it's been a bit and the final transaction has been recorded, then you can come in here and you can see where they bought it. So the buyer right here is when they bought it back in May of this year. They flipped it, but this is such a brand new completed project that the county hasn't even recorded this yet. So we have the before, and the after is what we're getting from the MLS. So that's two properties. And again, we're in the mid 40s.
Yep.
So here's another, basic flip. And this is another thing that you can take from these, Craig, is like, what is the level of construction? What's the level of materials of these neighborhoods, so that you're not, overbuilding, right? Or like, maybe you and your wife work together and she's like, oh, I want to put glass tile on the backsplash, and I want to put a chandelier here. And, and so some people like to do stuff based off of what they would live in, but not necessarily based on what is adequate for the neighborhood.
Right.
Another on market
like
deal.
not spending too much because you don't need to in a certain area.
Yep. They got this one at 38% on market deal. So there is the opportunity to get some stuff, in a low percentage of ARV range. And then you're just gonna have to figure out what your max is for certain projects.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of what I've been operating under now. Although I do like the idea of what you're saying there, kind of looking at the competition, seeing where that's happening, and then knowing, like if there's another like that D and amp that you just found, knowing that they buy at 45 or even 50 LTV, or sorry, ARV. If I get into something, I had a project that actually fell out a couple of weeks ago that I got 40,000 under list just by nature of my agent happened to know the other agent. We got into a really good negotiation. The family was ready to go, and we got into it 40 under contract. I couldn't line up. It was a fast close, and I couldn't get everything lined up in time. And I just didn't have relationships, that was actually before I had this software. So I didn't have a way to go in and look at like, hey, what other investors in town could I flip this to? I almost wish I had this then, because I could have done a quick search and maybe make a list of 15, flippers in the area, but I didn't have it at the time.
Yeah, Privy is great for finding those buyers that are active, that are doing deals today, right? That other one, A&M, they had just closed that other deal, so maybe they're on the hunt for one right now. Yeah. And also too, you can see, the properties that we're looking at. This house here is representative of this particular flipper's buy box. So you don't have to go in and build a strong relationship right out of the gates and earn their trust before they say, okay, Craig, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, 3-bedroom, 3-bath properties in 15204 underneath a certain price. But you can look at the property that you're viewing and use that as, okay, Blackridge Properties will buy in this zip code if I can find something that's similar. Now they got a steal on this one. Look at that. They got it for 14%.
Yeah.
On market. Like, there is a whole group of people out there who are, learning from YouTube University and just kind of guru specific type education. And they're not looking at the data for their market, and they're missing out on opportunities because they just think, oh, you can't find stuff on the MLS. And that's just absolutely not true.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, that's been my experience. And I do now have a couple of relationships with wholesalers, and I've gotten some pretty good properties from them, but there's always that margin in the middle that they take up, and a wholesaler doesn't want to leave money on the table, so they're going to take it as high as they think they can go to where the investors in the area are going to want to buy, which doesn't leave a lot of room for you. So these market deals are great, especially if you've got a good agent, or if you're calling and asking the agent who's listing the property to work with you too, which is fine. I've had those conversations, but I find that if you present them with some really good numbers, tell them what you want to do in terms of rehabbing the property, I've found people to be pretty reasonable in terms of where they want to sell at. And to be honest with you, I haven't found those conversations to be too tough, at least not yet.
Yeah, you mentioned the strategy of having a good real estate agent. How did you find your agent originally? Is it like a friend of the family, somebody you know?
It's a friend I've known for a couple of years, although we haven't done any business together because I own a home and I wasn't really looking. And as I started getting into, getting back into this and looking for these investment properties, I called her up and said, hey, do you want to work with me on these? And she's got some experience with investors, which is great. I do most of the work, right? I'm doing the analysis. I'm looking through Privy. I'm sending her some of these links so she can look at them. And we do a quick analysis. She sets up the meetings. A lot of times she'll go out and look at the property for me. The property I'm working on now, I actually just set foot in there for the first time today. And I've been contacting that property for weeks. So, some of these, she's going in and taking a look at for me, and I'm sitting back, looking at them, making phone calls, either making offers or having her make the offer. She'll be attached on the back end when we go to sell the property. So it's nice to have that relationship with someone who can list these for me, and she's got experience in the area, which is good.
Yeah. And that experience is the key. And you were fortunate to find somebody who understands real estate investing, but on the whole, most agents don't. Even if they've got a little certification on their business card that says they're investment specialist, it doesn't make them a specialist if they don't have any experience doing it. And in my opinion, the best way to find an agent who has experience is to look at the agents that are representing people who are buying investment properties. So this house right here was flipped, and the agent who represented this fix and flipper was Kelly Frey of Berkshire Hathaway. And so, there are some other sites out there, Bigger Pockets being one of them, and they have a thing where you can search for agents. But it's mostly the agent is what they put their information out there. They're putting their best foot forward. You know, I specialize in this and this, and that's probably true. But the best way I believe is just look at the agents who are representing the fix and flippers, look at the agents that are representing the ones that are buying portfolios of properties for rentals, and then talk to them. And then they can help you with some of that local market type stuff where, you know, maybe you, Craig, were, you know, looking at that house you found earlier, and you know, you're using comps, and maybe like a couple of the comps are on the other side of like 23rd Street, right? And it's not a major road, but you know, there's some traffic there. And then you talk to Kelly here, and she's like, "Oh, Craig, we can't use comps on the east side of 23rd. Like that's a completely different neighborhood."
Totally
And
not
those kinds of
relevant,
things
you
can
know.
trip
Yeah.
us up when we're trying to decide the value of properties.
Yeah. Yeah. And this, you know, like I know there are a lot of people who invest in areas that are outside of their local area, and that's fine. I know a lot of people do really well that way. For me, it's not that I don't want to look in other. I've lived in a lot of cities that I feel comfortable in, even investing now. But as I started getting back into this, I wanted to be able to kind of look at the property and have that knowledge and that experience. I know you can make a call to an agent and they just say, "Hey, just like you said, Benson, don't look, you know, east of 23rd Street because it's a different area and the comps aren't relevant." There's a little bit of comfortability in there for me, and maybe it's misplaced, but you know, knowing that it's close and that makes it sometimes easier to understand from a comp standpoint. But I can definitely see myself expanding out. You asked what I want to do later. You know, I want to I've got enough money now, and I've got enough cash for investing that I think I could probably do 3 or 4 of these. So that's my goal, hopefully before the end of the year, to get in contract on maybe 3 or 4 of these. And that's also what my contractor thinks he can handle in terms of one shot. So, you know, like if I can do 3 or 4 of these in the next 2 months, get into contract and get them rolling, then we're putting 3, 4 houses on the market in early spring. And, you know, that could be a good payday for next year. Could be a good
Oh
start
yeah.
to 24.
So if you're looking to do that many deals in the next 2 months, I mean, is it fair to say that you would be doing between 12 and 15 closings in 2024?
That'd be my goal. I mean, my goal, if I can do one a month, you know, like I don't know if I can, on average over 24. If I can hit that, I'll be in really good shape. Really good shape. Yeah.
I mean, that's a great goal. You know, it sounds like that is a little uncomfortable, right? They always tell you to
Yeah.
set, you know, goals that are maybe just out of reach or make you a little uncomfortable. But it sounds like you're on a roll. Like you're confident in the market. You're your own boots on the ground. Yes, you do have your agent who can go look at properties for you, but you can go and look, get your eyes on, and I'm sure that helps with like getting that extra layer of comfort and confidence in the property to be your own boots.
I think you're exactly right. It's a stretch for me. It's definitely uncomfortable, but not, you know, debilitating. But it's one of those things where I feel like I've got the process in place. I feel like I've got the software that can help me look through this and not be you know, trudging through it and going back a million different places. And I feel like I've got a little bit of the team that we can make that work. And you know, if it takes a month or so to fix or finish this one and then jump into the next one, I'm okay with that. I think I'll be able to do that actually a little bit faster, and then just, you know, rinse and repeat and replicate that process. And if I do get to that point, you know, obviously the liquid money is always an issue, right? It's not like there's a fountain of money just flowing for an unlimited number of projects. But as I do more of these, and I've got friends who want to bring some money in and family members who want to bring some money in, I think that opens up a little bit as these become successful. You know, so, and then again, you know, rinsing and repeating with some of the partners that I do have in place now.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's
Craig, that's
cool.
really exciting.
It's very
I'm
cool.
excited for you, and you know, like getting back on the horse, and you know, not having any PTSD necessarily from the 2008 to 10 time when a lot of us really took a hit,
Yeah,
but you were
yeah,
able to keep those properties afloat. The ones in LA and in Seattle, which is awesome. And a lot of people weren't able to do that.
yeah,
You know, they let some properties go back to foreclosure, and that's why there were so many REOs available during that
yeah.
time period.
Yeah, we had one property, one of those 2 properties, and then we ended up buying another one later on that which is done great. But one of those properties, we kept both of them afloat, which is tough. I mean, my wife and I were working, we had full-time jobs at the time. We didn't have kids and we didn't want to go behind. Even when we had lawyers and other real estate people saying, just ditch them, you're paying all this money. There was one point in time, I think we were paying a couple thousand a month, just so that we didn't, get bad credit or things like that. And then we did have renters in there, which, helped out. But one of those properties, we had a renter put a towel in the sink, turn the water on, and then leave.
Oh my.
Flooded out the place, flooded out the basement, flooded out neighbors. We had a big insurance claim. This is going to be crazy, Benson, that maybe, with your experience, you've seen something like this. 2 years later, I get a call from a landlord in Las Vegas doing a tenant check. That tenant who trashed our property actually gave our information to a prospective landlord to do a check. And when I told that landlord what happened, the guy thanked me. He was like, "Thank you for being honest with me." He's like, clearly I'm not going to rent to these people, but it's unbelievable. So like we had a lot of trouble with, one or two of those properties when that market started to tank. It's unfortunate, you never know people's lives, they run into hardships and things like that. So we don't, have any grudges against anybody, but, it's tough, sometimes being that landlord is a tough slog.
It is, but that particular renter though, there's a case for people having, some bad things happen and they lose jobs and then they just don't pay the rent. Right. And then maybe you have to evict them. That's completely different than somebody doing something malicious, like filling the sink up and flooding the property. That was their intent.
Yes.
So maybe their alter ego is the one that's put your name down for this other rental application, because no sane person would do that.
No, I got a phone call from this guy's from Las Vegas. And when he said the name, I was like, I almost couldn't believe that they put my name down. I'm like, who does that? Like, if you're going to be a jerk, you might as well just lie and give him a friend's phone number. But yeah.
That's crazy.
I know, right?
Well, so many good stories. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with me, and I'm excited for your journey. Maybe we could look at some of these houses as you're building them. Maybe look at some of the photos, like the before and the after, maybe some kind of midterm kind of photos, updates about what you're working on. And we could share that progress with people just to show them that, like, yeah, people are doing this and you can do it. If you just apply yourself, maybe use a tool like Privy, put the right people in place that you can lean on, agents and contractors, find some money people. You're fortunate enough to have some private money sources with people who are around you. So you've built that trust and people, like, they want to do stuff with you. So, you've got good people respect you and what you're doing. And the sky's the limit.
Yeah, man. Happy to, like I'm generally pretty tech savvy. So what I'm putting in place right now on the back end of my website is an area for, like my hard money lender, my investor, my partner, that kind of stuff, where we're going to keep progress updates on the property. So I was there today doing I used a quick app on my phone to do a 3D scan layout of the house. And then that gives me the ability to do quick calculations, whatnot. So what I'm going to do is put that kind of 3D layout up on an area of the site. So, like for my lender, I'll just give them a link and I'll give them a password, and they can log in and they'll see progress photos. They'll see, the daily rundown from my subcontractors, where we're at, what we're working on next, and then pictures, which will be great. So, that'll assist. They have their own format for the draws and stuff like that. So I'll use their format, but I'm going to keep track just for my people so that they can see and have that extra level of comfortability. Because when I get done with this one, I want to roll right into that next one, even before that, so that I can show the investors, hey, this is what I'm doing next. And, do you want to come along for that one too? So I'll share that with you, and, maybe you guys could take a look at it. If we want to do a follow-up, happy to do it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And for anybody that's watching too, some of the Craig's maybe looking for some money. And so, we'll look at the progress here, and I'm sure it's going to be a good product. So there might be an opportunity for some people to invest in the Pittsburgh market, have some boots on the ground there, and somebody who understands what's happening. And Craig is certainly somebody you should consider partnering with.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. Anybody, they could contact me. The website is thinkgobig.com, and you can contact me there, or just send an email to Craig at thinkgobig.com. We've got a good team in place with some good experienced and licensed people, and we're going to be moving on this stuff as we move forward. We got a good process in place, and people want to come along for the ride and do some good work with us, it'll be a lot of fun.
Awesome, Craig. Well, thanks for jumping on. I really appreciate it. It was good talking with you, getting to know you, and I'm looking forward to some updates on some projects and what you're working on. So thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks, Benson. Talk to you soon.